Welcome to Key Tech. Please describe this channel if you are interested in today's video. Not long ago, Apple threw 34 Chinese companies out of its supply chain. This incident caused a huge sensation in China because its burning bridges competition method has caused great harm to local companies. For example, O-Film suffered a 93% drop in profits due to the unilateral suspension of its agreement with Apple. In this regard, CCTV proposed that independent research and development must be strengthened to free ourselves from dependence on Apple as soon as possible. However, recently, Apple tried to repeat its old tricks and proposed cooperation intentions with two large Chinese companies, but was firmly opposed by the two Chinese companies. You know, Apple has always had the right to choose suppliers. Most manufacturers are proud to participate in Apple's supply chain. Perhaps Cook did not expect that he would be rejected so easily. This made his face was a bit expressionless. So, who are these Chinese companies, and why do they not care about Apple's orders? China is the world's largest consumer market, and it is also the largest industrial supplier. The iPhone's current status must be driven by local and Chinese consumers. And it was under this circumstance that Apple, which originally planned to enter the field of new energy vehicles, once again targeted the local market. According to people familiar with the matter, the two Chinese companies that were named are BYD, and Contemporary Amperex Technology, CATL. These two Chinese companies are the largest battery manufacturers in the country. Apple wants the Chinese companies to form a group. Only a professional team provides professional technical support to Apple, thus making it the Queen company in the United States. Apple believes in their partnership. However, what is surprising is that the negotiations between the two parties were not successful. The two Chinese companies were not interfered by Apple at all, but were blocked by a closed door. There may be three reasons why BYD and CATL will vote against Apple. First of all, although joining Apple's supply chain will bring more pressure on orders and revenue, it is also Apple's consistent approach to lower product prices by stimulating competition among manufacturers. If large enterprises such as BYD and CATL cannot obtain the right to negotiate in the future development, they will be at an extremely disadvantageous position in future cooperation. Therefore, the things bought for Apple are sometimes not only honey, but also arsenic. Secondly, Apple used the inverted ladder method to refuse 34 Chinese companies from entering its supply chain. This is also a good example. BYD and CATL established factories in the United States and established R&D centers under Apple's guidance. But in the end the losses caused by this incident far exceeded the losses at home by several times, or even dozens of times. Foxconn's inability to build factories in the United States is a good example, and BYD and CATL's rejection of Apple's proposal also has certain risk factors. Third, both BYD and Ningda have their own advantages. There is no reason to humiliate Apple in front of them. Moreover, the current new energy industry is only in the beginning stage, and there are too many variables. BYD is currently the largest new energy power battery manufacturer in the world. CATL occupies 30% of the market share and has established a good brand image in many countries such as Europe. There is no need to order from Apple to improve its own brand. Moreover, as the technology dispute between China and the United States becomes increasingly fierce, it is still difficult to conclude how much Apple values domestic chips. Therefore, for American companies to cooperate with China, China must remain vigilant at all times. In general, it will be difficult for Apple to profit from Chinese companies BYD and CATL this time. These two Chinese companies forcibly vetoed Apple's proposal, which is equivalent to telling all local companies not to be greedy for a short time. If you lose something, you will gain something. If you keep a green mountain, you will not be afraid of running out of firewood. If you keep a green mountain, you will not be afraid of running out of firewood. If you want to gain a foothold in this cruel world, you must seize the opportunity. He also warned American companies not to always think of fighting on their own. Domestic technology has begun to rise, and cooperation with Chinese companies must be sincere. Don't even think about using the big to bully the small, let alone the big to bully the small Chinese companies. Although Apple is accelerating the transfer of production capacity in India and other places, it still faces great difficulties in completely abandoning China. As the only country in the world with a complete industrial chain and the world's largest consumer market for mobile phones, smart connected cars, and other electronic products, China is of irreplaceable importance to Apple. Although Apple has gradually reduced its products manufactured in China, it still relies on Chinese supply chain companies. Apple has already made some of its latest products in China, and supply chain companies such as Luxshare Precision are also involved. This shows that Apple recognizes that China is still an indispensable market and production base and cannot completely abandon China. Apple's move to accelerate its abandonment of China is a strategic adjustment in response to market pressure and changes in trade policies. Despite facing some difficulties and challenges, Apple's expansion of production in places such as India will bring it greater market share and reduce product manufacturing costs. However, it is still difficult for Apple to completely abandon China. As the center of the global electronics industry chain and consumer market, Apple cannot easily abandon China. Therefore, Apple still needs to seek balance on a global scale, maintain its emphasis on and development of the Chinese market, and strengthen cooperation and competitiveness with other regional markets.